Before we begin, I'd like to issue a possible trigger warning, as the topics discussed here may be sensitive to some watching. Though I find these issues important to discuss nonetheless. This is the reality of our world, and to bring problems to light, they must be discussed. Korea is a region with a long and rich history going back centuries. As its global presence and influence continue to grow with the rise of K-pop, K-dramas, and the like, South Korea finds itself in a familiar position many major nations do. As with most industrialized nations, South Korea is finding itself importing labor in sectors most of its natural citizens tend to avoid. This, in combination with South Korea having too low of a workforce population, means that there simply are not enough people either willing to or able to fill these roles. The role of the blue-collar worker has been filled by those who will take what work they can, a sizable portion coming from out of the country. According to a study published by the Journal of Korean Medical Science in November of 2023, in South Korea, the number of migrant workers working with temporary work visas as of 2021 was 343,222. That is, 217,729 working with non-professional employment (E9) visas and 125,493 working with visiting employment or H2 visas. This is no small number. Of all the foreign residents nationwide, these workers account for a whopping 17.5. You may say, oh, that's less than 20% of foreign resident workers are on these temporary visas. That's nothing, but it is. That is nearly a sixth of the foreign residents in South Korea. A sixth of the foreign resident population working with temporary work visas. People who are let into the country purely to work the difficult jobs that can't be filled, jobs that most people look down upon. For years, South Korea has been struggling with a staggeringly low birth rate. At the time of this video essay, being reported at 0.81 births per woman. Their worryingly low birth rate has been present for decades, dropping lower and lower by the year. This has led to something of an issue concerning the existing workforce. There just aren't enough able-bodied workers to tend to every job, especially those jobs which many deem too unsavory or menial to fill in for. Essential work that nobody wants to do, not out of a sense of perceived ego or laziness. These jobs are difficult, often dangerous, with long-lasting adverse health effects, both physical and mental. They are jobs most people generally do not want to perform. These jobs are referred to as 3D jobs. 3D meaning dirty, dangerous, and demeaning. In the US, these are somewhat comparable to what we call blue-collar jobs, specifically jobs with poor or unsafe working conditions. In an article by the LA Times titled, "Facing a Labor Crisis, South Korea Turns to Migrants." Why are they more likely to die on the job? We are introduced to a man named Ajit Roy. Mr. Roy graduated from college with a degree in chemistry, a degree which should be versatile and marketable. Yet unfortunately, fortune did not favor Mr. Roy, finding himself working in a farming machine factory in South Korea, working 12-hour shifts over 6-day weeks, toiled away, working with harmful chemicals to degrease metal cylinders. Not long into his work, Ajit began to experience trouble breathing, working through the struggles with little choice. He's quoted as saying, "I would go through the motions of breathing, but feel like I wasn't getting any oxygen." For 9 months he worked with this inability to breathe properly, continuing to be exposed to harsh chemicals and heavy-duty hardware, until a doctor finally diagnosed him with a deadly lung disease. Testing did suggest the disease was linked to his job. The story of Ajit Roy is not that of an exception of a migrant man harmed by his work. Instead, it is one of countless stories of people being taken advantage of and subsequently neglected by a system that only cared about them as far as how much money could be made from their presence. Roy and many who worked with him were recruited by the Employment Permit System. The EPS is a foreign worker recruitment system that allows foreign workers to work in Korea for 3 years, in some cases up to nearly 5. It is a temporary work recruitment program built to bring in workers from another nation, use them for labor, then send them away once their contract is up. Every year, the number of foreign worker recruitments rises, bringing in more people to fill more 3D jobs. The issue in this comes from a failure to guarantee these workers safe working conditions. More and more people are recruited to fill jobs without adequate safety conditions, knowing full well that many of those who migrate to South Korea for work are often too desperate for money to turn down a job, even if the conditions are unsafe, essentially allowing the employers to hold these migrant workers hostage. These exploitative conditions, pushed on vulnerable workers, lead to exactly what you may expect: the drastic decline of health of these foreign workers, and in especially tragic cases, their deaths. As seen in the story of Ajit Roy, these 3D jobs take a hefty toll on the lives of migrant workers. Stories of migrant workers' plights are too important to ignore, whether they be in South Korea, the United States, the UK, or any nation. The answer of many uninformed is to further restrict immigration or punish the migrant workers for these failings. But the faults lay at the hands of the government and businesses who exploit these people. If a job is unsafe for a person to perform, then regardless of the cost, it must be adjusted and mended before a person can be expected to work it. An unsafe working environment means unhealthy workers, and unhealthy workers can only be worse for everyone involved. Of all things on this planet, human life is most precious. In South Korea, as with all nations, something must be done to stop exploiting the lives of these hardworking people. They toil away day in and day out, often barely making enough to support themselves, let alone the families many came to work to support for in the first place.